Nathan Young stood at the observation window of Vega Station, watching the stars. His job as humanity's cultural attaché meant long hours studying alien customs and helping humans understand the complex web of galactic politics. After 3 years at this remote diplomatic outpost, he had grown used to the quiet routine. The alarm shattered that routine, a sharp, pulsing noise that made Nathan's heart race. He rushed to the communications center where Officer Diane Miller was already pulling up the incoming transmission. "Distress signal from Ta City," she said, her face pale. "Mining colony. They're under attack." The screen flickered to life, showing shaky footage. Nathan felt his stomach drop. The attackers had bone-like exoskeletons and moved with frightening precision. Craxians, they had been pushing into human space for months, testing boundaries, but this was different. "They're targeting the residential areas," Nathan said, watching in horror as alien weapons tore through the simple homes of the miners. Families ran for cover. Some didn't make it. "We need to contact Earth immediately," he said. The transmission to United Defense Command took 8 minutes to connect. When Commander Lisa Peters appeared on screen, Nathan could see she was already in the middle of an emergency meeting. "We're receiving the Ta City footage now," she said. "How bad is it?" "Bad," Nathan replied. "They're rounding up civilians, destroying infrastructure. This isn't a border dispute. It's a direct attack on a peaceful colony." Lisa's expression hardened. "How many Craxian ships?" The colony reported 7 before communications became spotty. Standard invasion force for them. "Help will take time, Nathan. We're spread thin across 3 sectors. The nearest battle group is 2 weeks out, even at emergency speed." Nathan nodded. The vastness of space was humanity's greatest challenge in defending its people. "The colonists don't have 2 weeks." "I know. We're calling an emergency session of the Defense Council." Lisa paused. "There's something else you should see." She sent a file through the secure channel. It was a message, broadcast on all frequencies after the initial attack. Nathan played it. A Craxian commander appeared on screen. The alien's face was all sharp angles and ridges, with 4 glowing eyes set deep in a heavily armored skull. "Humans are soft. Your civilians are easy prey. Your military cannot protect them all. Surrender your outer colonies, or we will take them one by one." Nathan felt cold anger replace his initial shock. The Craxians had studied human expansion patterns, but clearly understood nothing about human nature. "They think targeting civilians will make us retreat," he said. Lisa nodded grimly. "They don't know us very well, do they? What will Earth do?" "Whatever is necessary." Lisa's voice was calm, but Nathan had worked with her long enough to recognize the steel beneath. "Document everything. We need clear evidence of war crimes for what comes next." After the call ended, Nathan began compiling all available data on the attack. Reports were coming in from automated systems across the colony. The mining equipment remained untouched while homes burned. The Craxians were setting up a base of operations in the colony's central administration building. Nathan's assistant, Ben Rogers, entered the room with fresh reports. "Sir, we've detected Craxian ships approaching 2 other mining colonies in nearby systems. They think this is going to be easy," Nathan said quietly. "They think we'll just watch as they pick off our most vulnerable settlements." Ben looked worried. "Will we? Earth's military is stretched thin." Nathan thought about human history, about how humanity had learned the terrible lessons of war among themselves before taking to the stars. "The Craxians have made a mistake," he said. "They think our restraint means weakness. They don't understand what happens when humans unite against a common enemy." He looked back at the screen showing the burning colony. "They're about to learn." Kelly Morris wiped dirt from her face as she peered through the tree line at what remained of the mining colony. Smoke still rose from several buildings. The Craxians moved through the streets with weapons ready, their bone-like armor gleaming in the light of Ta City. "How many did you count?" whispered Sam Porter, a geologist who had been working with Kelly when the attack came. At least 30 on patrol, Kelly replied. More inside the main buildings. They had been lucky. Kelly's team of 8 miners had been working the overnight shift in the deepest tunnels when the Craxians arrived. The thick rock had blocked communications, so they knew nothing of the attack until they emerged to find their home burning. Now, 3 days later, Kelly led a group of 30 survivors hidden in the dense forest 2 miles from the colony. Most were miners who had escaped during the chaos. 5 were children who had fled when their school was hit. "We need to move deeper into the hills," Kelly said. "They're expanding their search area." Sam looked doubtful. "The kids are exhausted. And we're running low on food." Kelly nodded. Before becoming a mining engineer, she had served as a combat medic in Earth's defense forces. Those skills were keeping their group alive now. "I know, but I need one more day to finish something." When night fell, Kelly and 2 others crept back toward the colony. They carried the small drones Kelly had built from parts salvaged from the mining equipment. The drones were crude but functional. "Plant them here and here," Kelly whispered, pointing to spots with good views of the Craxian base. "Make sure the solar panels are positioned right." The drones were her eyes. For 2 days, she had been collecting footage of everything the Craxians did. She watched through a tablet as the aliens set up equipment in the colony's processing plant. They weren't destroying the place. They were taking it over. "They're after our palladium deposits," Kelly realized. The rare metal was crucial for faster-than-light engines. Tau Ceti IV had one of the richest concentrations in this sector of space. Back at their camp, Kelly reviewed the footage with the other survivors. They watched as the Craxians forced captured miners to operate the extraction equipment. "Look," said Alicia Wright, a communications specialist. "They're separating out anyone with technical skills." The footage showed the aliens checking miners' ID tags and dividing them into groups. Those who resisted were beaten. 3 who refused to operate the mining equipment were executed on the spot. "We need to get this information out," Kelly said. "Earth needs to see what they're doing." Alicia had been working on that problem. Using parts from their emergency kits and mining equipment, she had built a small transmitter. "It won't reach Earth directly," she explained. "But if I boost the signal enough, we might reach the relay station at Proxima. They can forward the message." It took all night to set up the transmitter. They only had one chance before the power cells died. Kelly prepared all the drone footage and added a message of her own. "This is Kelly Morris, mining engineer at Tau Ceti IV," she recorded. "We have 30 survivors hiding in the northern hills. The Craxians are executing resistors and forcing others to work. They're not just attacking us. They're stealing our resources and treating us like slave labor." She paused, then added, "They don't think we're a threat. They think attacking civilians means we'll retreat. But we're still fighting. We're watching them. We're gathering intelligence. Please tell Earth we're still here." The message went out just as dawn broke over the hills. The group quickly packed up camp and moved deeper into the wilderness. "You think anyone will come?" Sam asked as they hiked. Kelly thought about the footage she had sent. The executions, the forced labor, the deliberate targeting of the colony's residential areas. "They'll come," she said firmly. "The Craxians think hitting soft targets makes us weak. They don't understand what happens when humans get angry." Admiral Paul Warren stood tall as he faced the United Earth Defense Council. The large room was quiet. On the wall behind him, images from Tau Ceti IV played. The council members watched with grim faces as Craxians rounded up miners and destroyed homes. "This footage came from a mining engineer named Kelly Morris," Paul said. "She and other survivors are hiding in the hills, watching everything the Craxians do." Chairwoman Susan Bell leaned forward. "How many colonies have been hit?" 3 so far. Tau Ceti was first. Then New Hope and Galileo Station. All mining colonies with small security forces. The room filled with angry whispers. Paul waited for them to quiet down before continuing. "The Craxian Imperium has made a critical mistake," he said, his voice calm but firm. "They believe targeting civilian populations demonstrates our weakness. They haven't studied our history. Councilman Joe Harris frowned. We've tried to open diplomatic channels. They refuse to respond. Because they think we're weak, said Paul. They see our attempts at diplomacy as fear. The next video showed Craxians forcing human miners to operate equipment. Then came footage of 3 miners being executed for refusing to work. Susan Bell's face hardened. What is your recommendation, Admiral? Operation Homecoming. Paul replied without hesitation. A full deployment of the Third Fleet. The council members exchanged looks. Earth's military was spread across dozens of star systems. A full fleet deployment was rare. That's 37 warships, said Councilwoman Maria Lopes. Our largest force. Paul nodded. The Craxians have 7 ships at each colony they've attacked. They believe it's overwhelming force against what they consider a minor species. They need to understand how wrong they are. The council debated for hours. Some wanted to try more diplomatic options. Others worried about leaving other colonies undefended. Paul waited patiently. He had served in Earth's Navy for 30 years. He understood their concerns. Finally, Susan Bell called for a vote. The result was clear. Authorization granted for Operation Homecoming, she announced. Deploy the Third Fleet in its entirety. Paul left the council chamber and went straight to the command center. Officers rushed around, preparing orders for the fleet. On a large screen, he could see the positions of Earth's ships across known space. Commander Ryan West approached with a datapad. The fleet can assemble at Jupiter Station within 48 hours. We'll need another 3 days to reach Ta City at maximum speed. That gives us time to insert Special Forces teams first, Paul said. We need to locate and extract the survivors before the main attack. Ryan looked at the images from Ta City. The Craxians don't know what they've done, do they? Paul shook his head. No alien species has yet discovered the truth about humanity. They see our careful expansion into space as a sign of weakness. They see our attempts at diplomacy as fear. They don't understand why we limit our military actions. Because we know how destructive we can be, Ryan said quietly. Exactly. We built our space fleet after centuries of fighting among ourselves. We learned restraint the hard way. Paul looked at the tactical display showing the Craxian positions. What the Craxians don't understand is that our restraint isn't due to weakness. It's due to our memory of what happens when humans go to war without limits. He touched a control, sending the attack orders to the fleet. Ships across the solar system began to move, converging toward Jupiter Station. Thousands of men and women prepared for battle. Send a message to Captain Grace Martinez, Paul ordered. Her Special Forces team drops first. They need to find Kelly Morris and the other survivors. Ryan nodded and left to send the orders. Paul stayed at the command center, watching as Earth's military machine awakened. The decision had been made. The response would be overwhelming. They thought attacking civilians was safe, he said softly to himself. That misconception is about to be corrected. Lieutenant Commander Eric Davis stood on the bridge of the UES Retribution. The ship hummed with energy as it dropped out of faster-than-light travel. Stars appeared in the view screen, and among them, the yellow glow of Ta City. All systems normal, reported his second officer, Linda Clark. We've arrived at the designated coordinates. Eric nodded. Position in the fleet. We're in formation with Battle Group C, third position, Linda said. The Admiral's flagship just arrived. Eric watched as more ships appeared around them. One by one, the vessels of Earth's Third Fleet dropped into normal space at the edge of the Ta City system. Cruisers, destroyers, and support ships took their positions in perfect order. 37 ships, whispered Linda. I've never seen this many together before. Neither had Eric. In his 12 years of service, the largest deployment he had witnessed was 15 ships during the border dispute with the Centauri Alliance. This was different. This was Earth's full might, unleashed. The UES judgment is signaling, said Communications Officer Pete Sanchez. Admiral Warren is calling all commanders to a final briefing. On the secure channel, Admiral Warren's face appeared. His expression was calm but determined. "We are maintaining communication silence with local space," he began. "As far as the Craxians know, they still have control of this system." The Admiral brought up a map of Ta City IV. Red dots showed Craxian positions, concentrated around the mining colony. Captain Martinez and her Special Forces team dropped into the northern hills 6 hours ago, he continued. They have located Kelly Morris and the other survivors. Extraction will begin once we engage the Craxian fleet. Eric studied the tactical displays. The Craxians had 7 warships in orbit around the planet. Standard invasion force for what they considered a minor operation. Our intelligence suggests they have no idea we can mobilize on this scale, Admiral Warren said. Their studies of human expansion patterns led them to believe we prioritize diplomacy and measured response. They haven't seen us truly angry. The Admiral outlined the battle plan. 3 battle groups would engage the Craxian fleet. The 4th would secure the planet and support the ground forces. Remember, the Admiral said, we are not just fighting to win. We are fighting to send a message. The Craxians must understand that targeting civilians was their worst possible choice. The briefing ended. Eric returned to his command chair, feeling the weight of what was to come. He thought about his sister's family on another mining colony near the Craxian border. They could have been the targets instead of Ta City. "Are you all right, sir?" Linda asked quietly. Eric nodded. "I'm thinking about what the Admiral said. About sending a message." "You don't agree?" "No, I do," Eric said. "I'm just realizing that this isn't just about Ta City. It's about making sure no one tries this again." The fleet moved forward in perfect formation, engines glowing against the darkness of space. For 3 hours they traveled in silence, covering the distance to the inner system where the Craxians waited, unaware. "Sir," said Pete from his communication station, "the Admiral is sending a transmission to the Craxian command ship." The message was simple. "You have targeted non-combatants. You have 1 hour to surrender and withdraw." The Craxian response came quickly, a visual transmission showing human captives being forced to work in the mines. Their commander appeared on screen, his 4 eyes glowing with contempt. "Humans talk of surrender when they send no ships," the alien said. "Your miners will work for us now. Send more ships, and these ones die." Eric felt cold anger spread through him. The Craxians still didn't understand who they were dealing with. They couldn't see the fleet approaching, hidden by the system's outer planets. Admiral Warren's voice came over the fleet channel. "All ships, prepare for combat operations. In 58 minutes, we show the Craxians exactly what humanity is capable of when provoked." The countdown began. Throughout the fleet, weapons systems powered up. Fighters prepared for launch. Medical teams stood ready. Eric looked at his crew, men and women who had trained for years for this moment. Their faces showed the same determination he felt. "They thought we were weak," he said. "They're about to learn how wrong they were." The Craxian commander Vexcor stood on the bridge of his flagship, looking down at the human mining colony through the viewing screen. The operation had gone perfectly. 7 Craxian warships had been more than enough to subdue the pathetic human defenses. "Status report," he demanded. His second-in-command approached. "Resource extraction is proceeding as planned. The human workers are resisting less now that they understand the consequences." Vexcor made a sound of satisfaction. The execution of those first few troublemakers had made the rest compliant. Humans were soft creatures. They'd valued individual lives too much. And the warning message from Earth: no further communications. As expected, they make empty threats. Their nearest military forces are weeks away. Vexcor was about to respond when alarms suddenly blared across the bridge. The tactical officer shouted in surprise. "I'm the gas giant." The viewing screen shifted to show space around them. Vexcor's 4 eyes widened in shock. Not 1 or 2 ships. Dozens of them. A massive fleet appearing where none should be. "Impossible," he whispered. The human ships moved in perfect formation. Their design was sleek, practical, built for war. The largest, at the center of the formation, was enormous. Weapon ports lined its hull. "Sir, they're launching fighters." Vexcor struggled to understand what he was seeing. Intelligence reports claimed humans valued diplomacy over warfare. Their military was supposedly spread thin across their colonies. This force was beyond anything their reports had suggested. Battle stations, power weapons, launch all fighters. His crew rushed to respond, but Vexcor could see the fear in their movements. They had expected an easy victory over a weak species. Now they faced a fleet that outnumbered them 5-1. The first shots came from the human flagship. Beams of energy lanced across space, striking the nearest Craxian vessel with perfect accuracy. Its shields flared and died in seconds. A second blast tore through its engines. "Return fire," Vexcor screamed. His ships began firing, but they were already on the defensive. Human vessels moved with unexpected speed and coordination. Their tactics revealed centuries of warfare experience. On the UES Judgment, Admiral Warren watched the battle unfold. The first phase of the attack was going exactly as planned. "The Retribution and Vigilance have disabled their first target," reported his tactical officer. "No casualties." Warren nodded. "Captain Johnson, deploy your fighter wing. Target their ground defenses." On the bridge of her carrier, the UES with Justice, Captain Maya Johnson gave the order. "All fighters, launch. Remember the mission parameters. Precision strikes only. No civilian casualties." 60 fighters streaked toward the planet's surface. At their lead, Maya guided her squadron toward the Craxian ground installations. "They've placed anti-aircraft batteries around the mining colony," she told her pilots. "Take them out first, then the communication arrays." The fighters dove into the atmosphere, moving at incredible speed. Craxian defenses fired desperately, but the human pilots had trained for years for this type of mission. Maya's targeting computer locked onto the first battery. "Fox 3, she said calmly, launching her missile. It struck directly on target, destroying the Craxian position. Across the battlefield, similar strikes hit with surgical precision. Craxian defenses fell one by one, while the mining colony itself remained untouched. In orbit, the battle was turning into a rout. 3 Craxian ships were already disabled. 2 more were surrounded, their shields failing under constant fire. "Sir," Eric Davis reported from the Retribution, "the Craxian flagship is attempting to flee. They're charging their faster-than-light drive." Admiral Warren considered this. "Let them go. Disable their weapons, but let them retreat." Eric was surprised. "Sir, they need to carry our message back to their leaders," Warren explained. "They need to tell them what happens when someone attacks human civilians." The Craxian flagship was hit with carefully targeted fire. Its weapon systems exploded in a series of small blasts. Its engines remained intact. Vexcor watched in horror as his fleet was systematically taken apart. Not destroyed, disabled with terrifying precision. The humans could have annihilated them, but they were choosing not to. That was perhaps the most frightening realization. "Faster-than-light drive ready," his officer reported. "Retreat," Vexcor ordered, shame burning within him. "We must warn the Imperium." As his damaged ship leaped into faster-than-light travel, Vexcor knew he would carry more than a warning. He would carry the terrible knowledge that the Craxian Imperium had awakened something they did not understand. The full military might of an angry humanity. Kelly Morris stood at the edge of the forest, watching as Earth's special forces secured the mining colony. After 2 weeks of hiding, leading the survivors through the wilderness, she could hardly believe what she was seeing. The Craxians were gone, replaced by men and women in Earth defense uniforms. "Ms. Morris," a voice called from behind her. Kelly turned to see a woman approaching. She wore the dark uniform of Special Forces, with captain's bars on her shoulders. "I'm Captain Grace Martinez," the woman said, extending her hand. "We've been looking for you." Kelly shook her hand, feeling tears forming in her eyes. "How did you find us?" Your transmissions, Grace explained. The data you sent was invaluable. It showed us exactly where the Craxians were positioned, how many forces they had, what they were doing to the colonists. The other survivors began emerging from the trees. Their faces showed a mix of relief and disbelief. Sam Porter carried one of the younger children on his shoulders. "Is it really over?" he asked. Grace nodded. "The Craxian ships have been neutralized. We're securing the colony now and treating the injured." Medical teams were already working in the central plaza. Freed miners were receiving treatment while military personnel established a secure perimeter around the colony. Kelly walked beside Grace as they entered the settlement. The place looked different now. The Craxian equipment was being dismantled. The forced labor camps were empty. Earth soldiers moved with calm efficiency through areas where alien invaders had recently stood. "I didn't think help would come so quickly," Kelly admitted. "We thought it would be weeks before Earth could respond." Grace gave her a small smile. "The calculus changed when they targeted civilians. There are lines you don't cross with humans." They reached the colony's administration building, now serving as the military command center. Inside, Kelly was surprised to see the scale of the operation displayed on large tactical screens. Not just Tau Ceti, but 3 other colonies were highlighted, all showing Earth military forces in control. "You liberated all of them?" she asked in amazement. "Simultaneously," Grace confirmed. Once the Defense Council authorized a full response, Admiral Warren designed an operation to hit all Craxian-occupied colonies at once. An officer approached with a datapad. "Captain, Admiral Warren is ready to address the colonists." Outside, the survivors gathered in the central plaza. More than 200 miners and their families stood together, looking up at a temporary platform where a large screen had been set up. Admiral Warren's face appeared. His expression was solemn but kind. "People of Tau Ceti IV," he began. "On behalf of Earth's United Defense Command, I want to express our deepest regrets for what you have endured. The attack on your colony was unprovoked and unjustified." He paused, his eyes showing genuine emotion. "Humanity expanded into space, seeking peaceful coexistence. We have always practiced military restraint. The Craxians mistook this for weakness. That misconception has been corrected." The screen showed images of the battle. Craxian ships disabled by precise weapons fire. Earth's fighters taking out ground defenses without damaging the colony itself. "We have liberated not just Tau Ceti, but all human colonies under Craxian occupation. Their forces have been driven back to their own territory with a clear message. Attacks on civilian targets will be met with overwhelming force." Kelly felt a hand slip into hers. It was Alicia Wright, the communications specialist who had helped build the transmitter. "We did it," Alicia whispered. "We held on long enough." "No," Kelly replied, squeezing her hand. "We did more than that. We showed Earth what was happening. We gave them the information they needed." As Admiral Warren finished his address, supply ships began landing at the colony's spaceport. Medical vessels, construction crews, and additional security forces arrived. The work of rebuilding had already begun. Grace found Kelly again among the crowd. "Admiral Warren would like to speak with you privately. Your actions here saved many lives." Kelly shook her head. "I just did what anyone would do." "Not everyone would have had the courage or the skills to do what you did," Grace said firmly. "You kept people alive. You gathered intelligence. You showed the Craxians that even when they think they've won, humans never stop fighting back." As they walked toward the command center, Kelly looked back at the colony. Already, people were clearing debris and starting repairs. Children were being reunited with parents who had been forced to work in the mines. "The Craxians thought attacking civilians would be safe," Kelly said quietly. "They learned otherwise." Grace nodded. "And so will anyone else who makes the same mistake." 6 months had passed since the liberation of Tau Ceti IV. Nathan Young adjusted his formal uniform as he waited in the diplomatic reception room of Vega Station. Today's meeting was one he never expected to have. "They're approaching the docking bay now," said Diane Miller, who still ran the communications center. Nathan nodded. "Is the security team in place?" "Yes. Though I don't think they'll try anything. Not after what happened to their fleet." The door slid open, and 4 Craxians entered the room. Nathan recognized their leader immediately from intelligence briefings. Supreme Diplomatic Envoy Zarkel, one of the highest-ranking officials in the Craxian Imperium. The aliens looked different than Nathan remembered from the attack footage. Their posture was less aggressive, more formal. They moved carefully, aware they were guests rather than conquerors. "Welcome to Vega Station," Nathan said, following the diplomatic protocol exactly. "I am Cultural Attaché Nathan Young, representing Earth's United Government." The aliens took their seats across the table. Nathan noticed how they kept their hands visible at all times, a deliberate sign of peaceful intentions. "We have reviewed your species' history," Zarkel began after the initial formalities were complete. "We fail to understand your wars among yourselves, your capacity for escalation when non-combatants are targeted." Nathan kept his expression neutral. "Humans united because we learned those lessons the hard way. We don't seek conflict, but we respond to it differently when certain boundaries are crossed." The Craxian nodded, his 4 eyes blinking in their strange pattern. The commander who escaped from Ta City brought back recordings of the battle. Our military analysts could not believe what they saw. "What did they see?" Nathan asked, though he knew the answer. "Precision. Restraint. Your forces could have destroyed our ships entirely. Instead, you disabled them with surgical accuracy. You demonstrated power, but controlled it. This is not what we expected from a species we deemed lesser." The meeting continued for hours. The Craxians proposed a formal non-aggression treaty. They offered reparations for the damage done to the mining colonies. Most importantly, they wanted clear guidelines on human boundaries. The lines they should never cross again. When the Craxians left, Nathan sent his report directly to Earth. The treaty would need to be reviewed by the Defense Council, but this was a promising start. Later that evening, a message arrived from Kelly Morris. She had been promoted to Chief of Colonial Security for the entire Ta City system. The surveillance systems she built during the occupation had been developed into a standard defensive package for all frontier settlements. "The colony is thriving again," she wrote. "We've doubled our population with new arrivals. People aren't afraid to live on the frontier anymore, not with the new defense systems and rapid response protocols." She had attached an image of the rebuilt colony. Where Craxian weapons had once destroyed homes, new buildings stood stronger than before. The mining operations had resumed, now with better equipment and safety measures. "The most interesting thing," Kelly continued, "is what we're hearing through our intelligence networks. The Craxians have shared their experiences with other potentially hostile species. Earth's reputation has changed across known space." Nathan smiled at that. Sometimes a single decisive action could prevent a dozen future conflicts. In military academies across Earth, the Ta City incident became a case study in proportional response and the strategic importance of ethical boundaries, even in warfare. Officer candidates studied how Admiral Warren had designed an operation that achieved both tactical victory and strategic deterrence. "They thought we were easy targets," Kelly had written at the end of her message. "They learned that humans protect their own." Nathan looked out the window of Vega Station at the stars beyond. Humanity continued its expansion into space, still seeking peaceful contact with other species. But now, potential aggressors had reason to reconsider targeting any human settlement, no matter how remote or lightly defended. The lesson had been clearly delivered. Attacking human civilians was never safe. As Nathan prepared for bed that night, he thought about how quickly everything had changed. 6 months ago, he had watched in horror as the first images from Ta City came through. Now, he had sat across from Craxian diplomats seeking peace. Humanity's response had been swift and overwhelming, but also measured and precise. That balance of power and restraint had taught the galaxy something important about the species from Earth. "We come in peace, Nathan whispered to himself, recalling the old phrase from humanity's early space dreams. But we're prepared for war.